Welcome back to the MMA Plug, presented to you by DenverSportsBetting.com on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz, sitting here alongside Josh Friend, and we're just going to talk to you real quick about a couple of matchups or a couple of fighters that are on the prelims that are some of them are newcomers and are largely relatively unknown to the common fan. So, Josh, one of the first guys that I want to talk about, or one of the first matchups I think that sticks out to me, is the Raoni Barcelos fight. Like that's a guy who is a killer bantamweight, and he just this fight has been pushed back. It was supposed to be on a prior card, but it's been pushed back to this point, and I think that dude is so talented, and he's only going to continue to grow. He's just happened to be in a very talent saturated division in the bantamweights, and it also led to call for what it is. Not being one of the more English-speaking foreign fighters, he doesn't get as big of a push as maybe that he should based on his talent.
Yeah, that is something that a lot of people who don't speak English would definitely benefit from. I remember the days of Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor. Like, you wanted so bad for Jose to say something in English to rebuttal, to make it more interesting, but it's just not the case if you don't know how to speak the language.
That's and I know that to a lot of the younger guys, it's a major point of emphasis. I used to be roommates with UFC Brazilian and Luigi Vendramini, and he talked about that was an important part of learning English. Mm-hmm. Was to be able to have the opportunity to speak in the media or make yourself connect across the board, because he mentioned examples like a Jose Aldo, who should have been a bigger star, should be revered much higher than I believe that he is. I mean, he's already thought of in a very high degree, but I think that he should be placed amongst the gods of the sport.
Yeah.
And he just isn't, because he didn't get that same sort of push.
Mm-hmm.
But, it is what it is at this point. That's something completely different. But I think on the flip side, a kid who deserves a lot of attention is Michael Morales. Michael Morales is coming in as a young, undefeated welterweight at 22 years old. He's the product of two lifelong judo practitioners and both of his parents. He's a kid who's been a gym rat from the time that he was young, as evidenced by him having a perfect, unblemished professional record and getting called at the UFC by just 22. So, Josh, when we're taking a look at someone, someone like him who started competing, in his young years, was already a phenom by the time that he was a teenager. What are your thoughts when you see some of these guys that are making a debut with perfect records and at such a young age?
Makes me want to get in and make some money before I have to face one of these guys, because that's what's happening. I mean, let's be real about it. MMA is not the NFL. It's not the NBA. It's not MLB. This hasn't been around for that long. We just had, not too long ago, the 25th year anniversary. Jordan, I'm 27. That means that the UFC's only been around for most of my life.
Right.
So you are now having kids who are born into this world where we have MMA at such a high level, and it's shown around all these platforms where kids can now see it and be like, that's what I want to do. Like we were speaking about earlier, the more athletic people who go to a different sport because they're just not familiar with fighting. They're not familiar with that. But now kids are growing up seeing that, and they're getting into it at such a young age. They're going to be killers by the time they get anywhere. And he's facing a really tough guy, a guy coming down from middleweight, Trevin Giles, to welterweight. So it's not like he's just getting a pushover of a fight. Like, the kid's going to get tested.
And I think that it's worth noting that on the Contender Series, his fight was against a legit vet. He fought against Nikolai Veretennikov, who, let's be real. He might be the subject of a potential future Icarus documentary, but that make of that what you will.
Yeah,
the dude has talent, and he's a strong, old, battle-tested veteran.
Yeah,
and he went in there and he was able to control that fight and beat him on the Contender Series to get signed into the UFC.
Yeah, and hey, this is just the future of the sport that we are seeing in our very own eyes, day by day.
Certainly, Josh. Is there anybody else or any matchups that on these early or on the undercard or the early prelims stick out to you?
Yeah, the early prelims, Two of them, actually. The first one I do in a positive light. I'm excited to see Kay Hansen get back in there. First fight started off. She is facing a Jasmine Jasudavicius. Great name. Can't pronounce it. But but yeah, I'm a big fan of Kay Hansen. I think that she's a very entertaining fighter.
I'm a big fan of Kay Hansen too.
Yeah, as all we are. But I'm excited to see her fight and get back in the swing of things. One fight that I do find quite interesting here is I've seen this before with one of Israel Adesanya's teammates. He was actually supposed to be on this fight, Jacob Malkoun, but he was supposed to fight Dobson on this fight, but that fight got pulled from this card. There's a guy on this card named Pete Rodriguez.
Yep, Pete Rodriguez out of Icon Fighting, so out of Jorge's promotion.
This is the first. This might be the first guy that we see in the UFC from Jorge Masvidal's promotion. Interesting. The guy's 4-0. The guy's 4-0. He's facing a guy who is right now 10-2.
Yep.
You don't see these types of matchups very much unless you're in the Midwest, and it's usually a flip-flop 10-6 kind of guy, 6-10 kind of guy going against another 5-0 guy. But interesting to see, how is this as a 4-0 fighter, as a 4-0 professional fighter. I remember when I was 4-0. You put me in the UFC, my lights are like deer in the headlights. I'm excited to see, does this guy go out there, does he freeze up under all these bright lights, all this pressure? Or, is Pete built for it?
He's 4-0 with 4 first-round knockouts. And it is also worth noting that this is a last-minute replacement situation for Warlley Alves.
And for those knockouts that you do speak of, Jordan, all of those opponents that he knocked out were 0-1 or 1-0. This guy's 10-2 with a lot of experience. Are you feeding him to the Sharks? Possibly. Is this a dangerous move? We're going to find out.
We shall see, and that is why they fight the fight.
This is why they play the game. But you don't play this game. This isn't a game that you can play.
This is dangerous. This is dangerous. This is real.
The hurt business.
This is real. This is the hurt business. What do you think of our thoughts as far as this UFC 270 card? Let us know on the Go Fast Energy Drink hotline and text line at 303-831-1340. Stick around after the break. We're going to go through the weekend rundown, as well as capping the hour off by going 3 rounds. This is the MMA Plug, presented to you by DenverSportsBetting.com on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio.
Yeah, brown skin, short legs, and fat ass. Son, that's my type, I cannot pass.